Somewhere on your face right now, there are two small openings you never think about. Tear ducts. You have cried before, probably this year, maybe this week, maybe today, and you assumed it was simple. Sadness goes in, water comes out. It is not simple. It is one of the strangest things your body does. And no other species on Earth does it the way you do. Let's start with the part that should confuse you immediately. Animals cry. Elephants produce tears. Dogs produce tears. Even crocodiles produce tears. But those tears are lubrication, protection, a reflex to dust, wind, salt, pain. Not one of them cries from grief. Not one of them cries because they are overwhelmed. Not one of them cries at a wedding or a goodbye or a piece of music that catches them off guard. You do. Emotional tears, tears triggered by feeling, not by injury, appear to be almost entirely unique to humans. Which means somewhere in your evolutionary past, a line was crossed. An ancestor of yours became the first creature in the history of life on Earth to cry not from pain, but from something else entirely. Something happened inside a nervous system that had never happened before, and scientists have spent decades trying to figure out exactly what. For most of history, the assumption was simple. Crying is weakness, a loss of control, a malfunction, something to be suppressed, hidden, trained out of you. Boys are told to stop. Adults are told to compose themselves. Soldiers are told it has no place on a battlefield. That assumption, as it turns out, may be exactly backwards. Biochemist William Frey at the University of Minnesota ran one of the strangest experiments in the history of tear research. He collected human tears. Not tears from onions, not tears from wind or dust or smoke, tears from grief, from real emotion. He asked people to cry while watching a sad film, while remembering a loss, and captured what came out. Then he compared it chemically to reflex tears, the kind caused by simply cutting an onion. The two were different, not slightly different, meaningfully different. Emotional tears contained higher concentrations of stress hormones, higher levels of a chemical called leucine enkephalin, your body's own natural painkiller, a substance closely related to opioids, which means emotional crying is not just an overflow. It may be a release valve, a biological mechanism for literally flushing stress chemicals out of your bloodstream through your eyes. Crying is not weakness. It might be your body defending itself, actively, chemically, but that still doesn't explain why it evolved in the first place. Because evolution is expensive. Every trait costs energy. Every trait has to earn its place, or it gets erased by time. A behavior that blurs your vision, makes noise, and visibly signals distress to every predator in range should have been eliminated within a few generations. Unless it did something valuable enough to outweigh that risk. Unless it kept people alive. Researchers studying attachment and infant development found the first real clue. Human babies are born almost entirely helpless. Unlike most mammals, a foal that stands within an hour, a calf that walks the same day, a human infant cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot survive a single day completely alone. And a human baby has exactly one tool for survival. It's cry. Not a quiet whimper. Not a soft, easily ignored signal. A cry loud enough and specific enough in its pitch and rhythm that it triggers an immediate, almost involuntary response in the adult human brain. Researchers have shown that the sound of an infant's cry activates regions of the adult brain associated with urgency and threat, faster and more powerfully than almost any other sound. Your brain is wired to find that sound unbearable to ignore. That is not an accident. Psychologist Advinger Hoots, one of the leading tear researchers in the world, has spent decades studying exactly this mechanism. His findings suggest something remarkable. The human cry did not start as an expression of feeling. It started as a survival tool, a signal so effective that it could summon help across distance, in darkness, without a single spoken word, long before language existed to ask for anything. Which means before crying became about grief, about heartbreak, about being moved by a piece of music, it was about staying alive. It was a baby's only weapon against a world that could otherwise ignore it to death. Now here is where the story gets genuinely strange. Because at some point in human evolution, that same mechanism, the one built for helpless infants to summon caregivers, did not disappear as those infants grew up. It transformed. Vingerhoutz's research proposes that adult emotional crying may be an evolutionary repurposing of that same infant survival signal. The same neural circuitry, the same ancient wiring, rewired over time for something new. Not screaming for a caregiver across a cave, but signaling something else entirely in a fully grown adult who technically no longer needs rescuing. Vulnerability. Because here is the part that should genuinely surprise you. Tears are visible. Unlike almost every other emotional signal you carry, you cannot fully hide them. A voice can be steadied with effort. A face can be arranged into calm, but tears, welling, catching light, undeniable, broadcast something to everyone around you whether you want them to or not. I am not okay. I need something right now. And strangely, at the exact same time, I am, in this moment, not a threat. Researchers believe this visibility may be the entire point of the behavior. In early human groups, small, interdependent, survival-dependent bands where every relationship mattered, a visible signal of vulnerability may have done something remarkable for the group as a whole. It may have strengthened it, because a creature who cries in front of you is a creature saying, without a single word, I trust you enough to let you see that I am not fine. And a group that responds to that signal with care, instead of exploiting the weakness it reveals, builds something evolution rewards enormously across generations. Cooperation, trust, bonded alliance that outlasts any single hunt or single crisis. Which means crying may not be a flaw in human design. It may be one of the load-bearing walls of human society itself. One of the quiet mechanisms that allowed small groups of vulnerable, slow, physically unimpressive primates to somehow outlast every predator that should have ended us. But there is still one mystery left, and it may be the strangest part of all. Why tears, specifically? Why not just the sound? Why not just a cry out, a gasp, a raised voice? Why does water have to be involved at all? One theory, proposed by researchers studying visual signaling in humans, points to something almost too simple to believe. Tears blur your vision, which means in the exact moment you are crying, you become measurably less able to detect threats around you, less able to fight, less able to flee, less able to see clearly what is happening in front of you. In other words, crying may make you, biologically, genuinely more vulnerable in the moment you do it. Not performed vulnerability. Actual physical vulnerability. And some researchers believe this cost is not an accident of the mechanism. It may be the entire point. Because a fake cry is difficult to sustain convincingly, but a real one comes with a real, measurable cost. Blurred vision, reduced alertness, visible physical weakness in front of others, which makes it what biologists call an honest signal. A signal that is expensive enough to fake that it usually is not faked. The kind of signal evolution tends to preserve generation after generation precisely because it cannot be easily counterfeited. So somewhere in your ancient past, tens of thousands of years ago, maybe far earlier than that, a human ancestor stood in front of another human being and felt something overwhelming. Loss, fear, grief, relief, love arriving all at once. And their body did something no creature before them had ever done in quite the same way, for quite the same reason. Their eyes filled, not from smoke drifting across a fire, not from wind, not from any physical pain at all, from something happening entirely inside their mind. And the person standing across from them saw it and understood, on some pre-linguistic, almost animal level, exactly what it meant. Long before either of them had words sophisticated enough to explain it. That moment, that first silent exchange between two early humans, may be one of the oldest forms of communication our species ever developed. Older than complex language. Older than most of what we now consider civilization. A wordless message passed directly from one nervous system to another with nothing lost in translation. I am overwhelmed. And the other person's response to that message, whether they moved closer, whether they offered help, whether they simply stayed instead of walking away, may have shaped the earliest architecture of human cooperation. The earliest blueprint for what it means to be trusted by another person. You still carry that architecture. Every time you have cried, at a funeral, at a film that caught you off guard, at a piece of news that changed the shape of your day, you were not malfunctioning. You were not being weak. You were running code written by your ancestors before written language existed, before agriculture, before cities, before almost everything you would call human civilization. Every tear you have ever cried carries a signal older than your name, older than your language, older than the very concept of recorded history. It says, in a code your body has never forgotten, something in me is real right now, and it is asking, silently, the exact same question it has asked since the very first time it happened. Somewhere in the deep unrecorded past. Will you see me? Somewhere on your face right now, there are two small openings you never think about. They have been passed down to you across an unimaginable span of time, carrying the same ancient signal, the same original message, waiting, quietly, for the next moment it will be needed.